this hour, we start with, of course, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, where Moscow's defense ministry has reported continued offensive operations in Ukraine's Myrnohrad region. The Russian defense ministry further stated that 7 Ukrainian attacks have been repelled in the Pokrovsk region, which was an attempt to break out of encirclement. The ministry has also stated that 6 Ukrainian attempts to free surrounded units in the Kupiansk area have been successfully repelled. Furthermore, Russia has targeted energy facilities supporting Ukraine's defense industry. Additionally, the Russian forces have also captured the town of Rybne in Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia region. Okay, of course, we are discussing the ongoing war in Ukraine and the developments from the battlefield. The Russian Defense Ministry has, of course, reported continued defense operations in Ukraine's east, in particular the Myrnohrad region. The Russian Defense Ministry has also, of course, stated that 7 Ukrainian attacks have been repelled in that battle for Pokrovsk, which was an attempt to break out of the encirclement of the logistics hub. 7 people have been killed in the past 24 hours also after power stations, substations were targeted in Ukraine. Now joining us is Professor Georgy Toleraya. He is a professor at the Russian Academy of Science in Moscow. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor Toleraya, here on the program. It's a pleasure to have you. Of course, developments from the battlefield. Moscow says its forces have captured Rybne in Zaporizhzhia and are advancing on Myrnohrad. How significant are these gains strategically and the whole, in context to the whole Zaporizhzhia region as well?
Well, I would say that the Russian troops are advancing and they're ending the encirclement of Ukrainian troops, although Ukrainians sometimes report differently. But anyway, no one can argue that the Russian advance is steady and consistent. Of course, it won't be stopped unless all the territories which voted at the referendum for joining Russia wouldn't be freed, wouldn't be liberated from the Ukrainian troops. So this has to go on. And at the same time, Russia is also advancing in strategic terms. This night there's been a coordinated strike on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, especially power plants and power station. This is just a usual way of modern war in every modern conflicts. Well, we can remember even the US-Iraq attacks. They usually start and include attacking the enemy's energy structure, and that's especially important to stop supply of armament and to stop supply of different kind of ammunition to Ukrainian troops. The same goes with the attacking the railroads and other logistic infrastructure, and I'm sure it will go on. At the same time, Ukrainians keep on sending the drones. I think this night there was 250 drones sent to Russia, different parts of Russia, and unfortunately this also has to go on unless there will be some kind of peace talks and some kind of agreement.
Yes, Professor Toleraya, do stay with us. We have further updates from the battlefield. And Russia has launched a barrage of drones and missiles in overnight attacks on Ukraine, killing 7 people. The strikes targeted substations that supply power to 2 nuclear power plants. According to the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andrei Sybiha, Russia is once again targeting substations that power the Klementensky and Rybne nuclear power plants. He also noted that these attacks were not accidental, but were well-planned strikes as Russia continues to deliberately endanger Europe's nuclear safety. Those are, of course, comments from the Ukrainian side. And meanwhile, Ukrainian Energy Minister Svetlana Hernchuk says that emergency crews have stabilized the power grid, but also warned that consumers might face further power cuts to allow repairing work. Okay, Professor Tolerai joins us once again. Your thoughts, of course, on these accusations from Kiev saying that Moscow's actions here, when they target these nuclear substations that power the nuclear plants, the significant nuclear plants in Ukraine, that endangers the whole of Europe's nuclear safety, as of course thousands of people in Ukraine lose access to power. Professor Tolerai.
Well, I think this report's very ominous because it's maybe a cover, which has been in fact reported several days ago by Russian intelligence, that Europeans with the hands of Ukraine are planning some major provocation at the Zaporizhzhia atomic power plant, nuclear power plant, which is controlled by Russia. They plan a provocation that could even lead to meltdown of the reactors, and that would in fact endanger the whole of Ukraine and part of Europe. That would be a major disaster, much more dangerous than Chernobyl disaster 40 years ago. So these plans are absolutely crazy. This is quite a absolute crazy plan that would enable Europe to accuse Russia of some kind of nuclear blackmail or nuclear danger, and mobilize Europe and US to fight this threat. So this plan has already been publicized, and hope it won't work. But at the same time, I note these reports by Ukrainian mass media that substations to nuclear stations, other nuclear stations in Ukraine have been attacked. This is sort of a preparation on the topic of nuclear threat emanating from Russia, because as I've mentioned, we actually attacked the energy infrastructure, mostly thermal power plants and their substations. Some of them may double to nuclear power plants, but singling out this nuclear aspect is very telling. It's very dangerous plan which might be being implemented. So we must watch. We must watch very carefully what Ukrainians and the European masters, most I would say adventurous circles of military-industrial complex are doing.
Okay, Professor Tolerai, thank you very much for explaining that for us, and do stay with us. Where Ukrainian strikes on Russian energy infrastructure have left over 20,000 residents without power across several border regions. In Belgorod, Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov reported severe damage to electricity and heating networks, leaving multiple streets without power supply. In the neighbouring Kursk region, a fire at a power plant in Kornevo disrupted electricity in 10 municipalities. Simultaneously, another fire broke out at a heating facility in the Voronezh region. Russia's defense ministry has said that its forces destroyed 44 Ukrainian drones over Bryansk as Kiev continues to target Russian energy infrastructure as the winter approaches. Of course, that winter is approaching, Professor Tolerai. And can you talk to me a little bit about, of course, the fact that both of these sides are targeting energy infrastructure here as that biting Eastern European winter descends. What is the significance of the timing here? And of course, we've seen history will tell us that the Russian, the Ukrainian winter can be weaponized. Is this another example of that?
Well, I've told you at the beginning that attacking the enemy's infrastructure is a standard feature of modern conflict, mostly used by US against Iraq and other countries. So there's small wonder that the Russians are doing the same. I'm just personally wondering why it wasn't done before. Probably there was hope that the conflict will end soon. We consider the need for humanitarian aspects so that the population won't suffer. So for 3 years, there has not been much attacks on the energy infrastructure and transport infrastructure, but now I think it's the time, unfortunately, to do this. And of course, the winter is close by, and we'll have snow pretty soon, in a couple of weeks probably. And those people who won't have energy and thermal supply would suffer, of course. But it's up to Ukrainians to end this conflict, just to in fact to admit defeat and start the peace talks.
Professor, how are Russians feeling in these regions that Ukrainians are targeting? You have the likes of Belgorod and of course other regions which are consistently being hit by Ukrainian drones in particular. How is it affecting their life there, and also the significance why Ukraine is targeting them specifically?
Well, they're targeting the areas they could reach, of course, the border areas, and of course, that's quite a problem. The people have to remember their former generation during the Second World War, when the Germans tried to freeze out the city of Leningrad, modern St. Petersburg, where there was no supply of electricity or no supply of heating. And so lots of people died from frost, and lived without any electric light. So we have to remember this unfortunate time. And of course, the authorities are trying to repair and to provide alternative sources of energy and heating. But anyway, of course, it's a major setback for both for the people's life and economy.
Yes, Professor Georgi Tolerai, thank you very much, as always, for joining us here on NewsX World. Pleasure to have you. We now move on and to some diplomatic updates, and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that ending the conflict in Ukraine is impossible without addressing its root causes and taking Russia's interests into account. Speaking to reporters, Lavrov reaffirmed that Moscow will not abandon its core conditions for peace, including Kyiv renouncing NATO membership and withdrawing troops from regions claimed by Russia. Lavrov stated the importance of maintaining regular communication with the United States, saying he and the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio understand the need for dialogue on the Ukrainian issue. He also expressed readiness to hold face-to-face meetings with Rubio when necessary. His comments come after the cancellation of a planned summit between US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Budapest. Now, joining us to discuss these diplomatic updates is Ross Feingold. He is a political analyst and he joins us live from Taipei in Taiwan. Ross, always a pleasure to talk to you. Of course, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said that he is ready for these face-to-face talks with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. What does this signal?
These kinds of meetings have been on and off throughout the period of time since the Trump administration took office at the end of January, whether that's meetings at the foreign minister level or even at the leadership level between Trump and Putin. So there's often talk and cancellation, and then there's talk again, and sometimes these meetings actually do happen. I think the important thing to keep in mind here, looking at it from the American perspective more than the Russian perspective, is that the Trump administration continues to be willing to engage in this process. And again, sometimes these meetings proceed, sometimes events transpire that cause one side or the other to say, now's not the right time. But ultimately, in the interest of reaching a ceasefire or some kind of long-term cessation of hostilities, it's clear the Trump administration remains engaged in that process. And as long as the Trump administration remains engaged, then it seems clear that the Russian government will remain engaged as well.
Yes, and Ross, we've seen nothing but political showmanship between the United States and Russia since Donald Trump took office for the second time. Of course, we've seen that meeting cancelled between Trump and Putin in Budapest. And of course, no one can really know what Donald Trump is thinking currently. But what's changed from the Russian side, where it comes that Sergei Lavrov wants to have this conversation now? Of course, the US has imposed new sanctions on 2 crude oil companies in Moscow, which reports have said that they've been quite hard-hitting on the Russian economy. What has made it so Lavrov is supposedly interested in peace talks at this moment?
Again, the Russian side or the Ukrainian side, they've been interested, I would say, throughout the course of this year, ever since the Trump administration expressed a willingness to be a mediator in this process. But yes, the level of interest has at times increased and at times decreased, whether that's from Ukraine or Russia. But the reality is that there are a number of moving parts here. On the one hand, as you mentioned, the United States has imposed sanctions on 2 of Russia's major oil companies. There's talk that India might reduce its purchases. There's talk that even China might reduce its purchases. Obviously, that's a concern for the Russian government. And the Russian government really does have an incentive to reach a peace agreement that would include a removal of international sanctions, or at least facilitate the continued purchases by India and China. On the other hand, Russia in recent hours is claiming some battlefield success with the potential capture of Pokrovsk, which might also incentivize Russia to return to talks, because they might take the view that they have the upper hand on the battlefield, and that kind of forces Ukraine to reach the best deal that is possible for Ukraine. So I would say, even if this process falls apart at the moment, and a meeting between Rubio and Lavrov doesn't come to fruition, or a meeting or a phone call between Putin and Trump doesn't come to fruition in the coming days or weeks, chances are these things will heat up again 3-4 weeks from now.
Yes, Ross, thank you very much. Do stay with us as we move west to the Iberian Peninsula for our next story.